Hey everyone listening, trying to find direction and move with intention. Welcome to Moving with Intention, a podcast by Black Sheep Coaching. We hope the episode you're about to listen to is empowering, insightful, and helpful. We hope you're moving with intention in your life and taking actions, as small as they may be, towards becoming the person you want to be and living the life you want to live. Disclaimer: this podcast may contain discussion of sensitive topics that may trigger some individuals. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health professionals or resources, and we encourage you to seek those out should you need them. Welcome to Moving with Intention, where today we're going to discuss why therapy works. Now, this is an article entitled Why Therapy Works, published by Stephen C. Hayes, Ph.D., and this is available in the February 2023 edition of Psychology Today, a magazine published in the psychology field. Now, the article is entitled Why Therapy Works, and in it, Stephen C. Hayes outlines that about 5 years ago, various colleagues of his decided to look at all the successful mediational studies done on a psychosocial intervention in a randomized controlled trial targeting a mental health outcome. We had no idea what we were in for. It was a huge effort that took nearly 50 people over 4 years. There were more than 54,000 studies that were rated twice to determine if the analysis were properly done, and this group ended up with 281 clear findings using 73 different measures. Now, those numbers are impressive. I think 54,000 is quite a group, and 54,000 studies and finding 281 clear findings using 73 different measures. I mean, those seem impressive to me on the surface. The results of this study were published in the journal Behavior Research and Therapy. And this article discusses how there isn't just one pathway to change. There are many, and in different contexts, different people will go through different pathways of change. Now, there was one particular combination of skills they found that stood out to them. And they say that this combination of skills were commonly effective than things like, self-esteem, support from friends, family, um, and even whether or not clients had negative or dysfunctional thoughts. They identified that the most common pathway to change was what they call psychological flexibility. They said that these flexibility skills and concepts that were like closely related accounted for 55%. 55%, so more than half of the explanation for successful therapy relied on this notion of psychological flexibility. So this article goes on to say whether you suffer from anxiety, depression, addiction, or another form of mental distress, psychological flexibility or developing it helps us deal with these conditions effectively and move in a meaningful direction. So we'll go through the various skills that they discuss in this article as psychological flexibility. And I think, one of these we actually talked about on the podcast in one of the earlier episodes. So um, I definitely myself have seen the power of it. So skill number one was awareness. The article discusses noticing what happens in the present moment. What thoughts, what feelings, and being in touch with the deeper aspects of ourselves, the spiritual self, and just kind of our inner workings. And I think when we talk about awareness on the podcast, I think I've touted it as such a powerful skill, being in the moment, being present, being mindful, living in the now. I've often heard a quote. What was it? And once again, disclaimer: not a mental health professional. But something like living in the past is depression, and living in the future is anxiety. And I resonate with the anxiety aspect of it where, I'm scared about what's going to happen in the future and I'm anxious about, what outcomes are coming, and living in the now, I think can be difficult for people. It's been difficult for me at least sometimes. Being present, being mindful, not thinking 20 steps ahead. And this level of awareness, one of the quotes in the article is the now cannot be experienced with words alone. It needs to be attentively experienced. So paying attention. It's the difference between talking about the flavor of an orange and actually tasting the fruit. Interesting. The latter is much richer than the former. Instead of being caught up in your own head, awareness is about being in the here and now. And if you're listening to this, and I know for myself as an anxiety sufferer, the notion of being caught up in my own head, I resonate with that and I relate to that very deeply. So, skill number one under this psychological flexibility umbrella is awareness. Skill number two, openness. So, the article talks about allowing ourselves to feel and process difficult thoughts and painful feelings exactly as they are without their necessarily having to change before you move toward the life you want to live. So, being able to feel that pain, being able to sit in our sadness, sit in our discomfort. We previously talked about escapism and that distraction from the mental distress. But when we talk about being psychologically flexible, I think this alludes to being able to handle those things, to being mentally strong to the point where sadness and pain we can feel it, we can feel it, we can examine it, we can identify it, we can sit in our discomfort and continue to move forward in our life and continue to you know to get up and keep going even when things are hard. So one thing they talked about in the article was this is counterintuitive sometimes because people tend to seek therapy precisely to get rid of negative thoughts and feelings. Unfortunately, the mind does not work this way, and I think a lot of people who have had very negative thoughts and feelings can tell you this. Like they're not going away. They're I often have sometimes negative feelings, negative thoughts, negative self talk, and really it doesn't go away. I've had to combat it. I've had to battle it and push back and say, no, you know what? That's just my negative self talk. I don't actually feel this way. I'm just having a hard time right now. Things have been a little tough, but you know what? I've gone through tough, and I've gone through tough things. Let's push forward. And I think that having that mindset can be extremely helpful and really help push through. I mean, just this year, based on the pandemic stuff, I've been through 3 jobs, and as somebody who had is a career focused individual, and and was at one workplace for over 10 years. Changing jobs is a major shift. It can throw your life out of balance, and trying to ramp up and trying to learn new processes, and it's a lot of information. It's a flood. So just a thought there. This also talks about the harder we try to eliminate pain, the more it controls us. Don't we know it? So the definition of openness, according to this article, is being able to drop the internal fight, being able to just let those thoughts and feelings exist as thoughts and feelings. And they don't control us. There are thoughts, there are feelings, but we can examine them and we can dismiss them if we'd like. If there are feelings and thoughts that we find to be harmful and negative for us, we can dismiss them and say, well, I thought this way, but screw it, is what it is. The final line in the section about openness is, ironically, when you adopt the open posture, thoughts and feelings often change in a more positive direction. And I've personally experienced that in my life. Skill three in psychological flexibility: valued engagement. So, engaging in things that matter to us, engaging in things that bring us value and moving in that direction. And for myself, I know that sometimes this is difficult because there are so many other factors that are involved. And I tend to, as many others in moments, be a people pleaser. So that's something that I've had to combat. And this notion of valued engagement: do I value this engagement? Is this something that is a vote for my character and is a vote for who I want to be? And I believe I'm referencing, I think, James Clear there with Atomic Habits. Um, you can look it up, but does the action that we're taking, is that a vote for the person we want to be? I think that's what valued engagement is, and engaging in things and engaging with people who matter to us, engaging with activities and engaging in communities and engaging in workplaces and engaging with people who matter to us. It makes life more meaningful. It makes us, I think, feel fulfilled. And a key note, a key note about this particular skill in this article is that these matters need to be freely chosen. They can't be forced upon us. We need to choose what matters to us. We need to choose our own goals. We need to choose what we choose to do and how we choose to behave based on our internal objectives, values, goals, personal qualities, etc. So, why are these important? Why are all these three skills and this notion of psychological flexibility important? According to the article, psychological flexibility reorients us. So, the first two skills create a working approach to mindfulness skills. Psychological flexibility are skills that do a lot of good, according to the article. This notion of being psychologically flexible and mindful, they regard as a small set of skills. But these small set of skills have a major impact. So, why therapy works, which is the name of the article. They say here that it works because it establishes awareness and openness and values based engagement. It helps us work on those particular skills. And in doing so, these skills lead to positive changes. They give various examples here of how these skills play out in a day to day. Some of these examples include being frustrated at work and just allowing that to be and feel your feelings and then push on and complete the assignment. Or they talk about, fighting with a spouse and acknowledging the pain and think about that as a learning opportunity and moving forward. They say that in this article that psychological flexibility empowers us to just stop fighting ourselves. That internal conflict, that struggle, that sometimes that back and forth, the voices in our head, our negative self-talk, our inability to deal with our feelings, and sometimes us being too hard on ourselves. This article talks about psychological flexibility helping to helping us to understand that we don't need to fight ourselves all the time. And as a skill, as these skills, openness, awareness, and value-based engagement, as we work on these skills and practice these skills, we become better at them. So this notion of psychological flexibility, these skills have been shown to be one of the factors in successful therapy. And as somebody who as somebody who has a therapist and regularly visits with her, I can really resonate with a lot of these. I think these are skills that I have been working on and have been taught myself. And I would venture a guess as to say others who are in therapy also get a chance to discuss and practice these notions of awareness, the skill of awareness, the skill of openness, and hopefully with those two skills being developed, value-based engagement comes more naturally. So, according to this article, the history of science and human development shows that when we have a clear target, we can learn how to move towards it. So, the psychological flexibility and developing these skills gives us a target, gives us something to move towards. And there's a very bold statement in this article that processes of psychological flexibility are not the only ones of importance in creating mental health, but they are the most universally significant ones. That's a major statement to say that these three skills are the most universally significant when it comes to mental health. That's huge. And article closes with the opportunity to develop these vital skills in therapy gives us all a target for change. I found this article very insightful. I found it very relatable. I found that in my particular journey that these skills are skills that I have been working on, and perhaps you as a listener, these are skills that you are working on. I mean, you're listening to a self-help podcast and a podcast on moving with intention and self-improvement. So I think that shows a sense of awareness on your part. This sense of awareness, this sense of openness, of accepting the feelings of, hey, I need to improve and let's go with it. And this notion of value-based engagement where in engaging with the podcast and in listening, you value self-improvement. You value change. Otherwise, why would you be listening? These three skills are very interesting and impactful. At least in my journey, they have been. And I was happy to come across this article on why therapy works. I thought it was just insightful and yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. So once again, this is the article Why Therapy Works. It is in the February 2023 edition of Psychology Today on page 23, and it was written by Stephen C. Hayes, Ph.D., who is a Nevada Foundation professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Nevada, Reno. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was insightful. I thought this article was great, and I wanted to share it with you. So thank you. I'd like to thank you all for listening. A small reminder that you can find all our links on linktree/blacksheepcoaching. That's linktr.ee/blacksheepcoaching. It would also mean a lot if you could support the podcast by subscribing, liking, sharing, or becoming a patron on Patreon. I hope this episode assisted you in finding direction and moving with intention. And remember that big journeys start with small steps.